Story 1. Ruin my wedding to propose? I'll ruin your proposal. I have a young brother Max who had a complicated birth and had to stay a month in the ICU, and because of that my parents have always doted on him and almost denied him nothing, even if it was to the detriment of my sister Claire and I. My brother drinks in on the attention and has on more than one occasion made himself the center of attention at either my sister's, or a cousin's special event. Because of this, Claire and I have a strained relationship with Max and our parents. Unfortunately, Max met and fell in love with Jane, who announced her own pregnancy at the baby shower my mom held for Claire. When I proposed to my wife Michelle, I just wanted to elope, but she really wanted her family to be there, so I invited my family out of obligation. While out, my best man Jim noticed a receipt from a jewelry store slipped out of Max's pocket. Jim confronted Max about this, which led to an argument. Jim told me everything and I told Max that he was no longer going to be a groomsman because I knew he was going to propose at my wedding. Max cried to our parents, and which led to a blowout. In my parents' eyes, since Max never admitted that he was going to propose to Jane at my wedding, I was unfairly judging him. I refused and brought up Max's past behavior. My parents couldn't refute this and got Max to agree to not try anything at my wedding. This wasn't enough to convince me to let him be a groomsman, but I warned him that if, as a guest, he'd try anything, I would make him regret it. Fast forward to the wedding, and surprise surprise, Max walked over to Jane and proposed to her during Michelle's father-daughter dance, and did it in a way so that everyone would notice. Cue my revenge. Jim and I had hired a woman to pretend to be Max's side piece, who cornered Max and Jane and claimed that she was pregnant with his baby. Max denied this, but when she called his phone, I gave her his number and messed with Max's phone to incriminate him. It didn't look good. Jane threw the ring back at Max and left in tears. When Max saw the smile on my face, he knew that it was me, and I didn't respond to a single call/text from him or my parents until after the honeymoon. Jane has thrown Max's stuff out and has been denying access to their kid. Max is furious and is demanding that I clear his name. I sent him a text saying that I had no idea what he was talking about, as well as a screenshot of a bill for the wedding, and gave a vague message demanding reimbursement for half of the wedding costs. Michelle knew the whole time what I was planning and gave me the green light after Max ruined her moment with her dad, so I felt pretty good, but now even Claire thinks I went too far. Story 2. My brother-in-law tried to get me fired, so I ruined his wedding photos. This actually happened about 4 years ago. At the time, I was married to my now ex-wife. Her sister Liz was getting married to Bill. But let's backtrack a bit so I can set the scene. It's a bit long, but bear with me, friends. I'd had a storied past with Bill, and we did not care for each other in the least, to put it mildly. He is, a compulsive liar, mooch, and cheat, and had pretty much alienated Liz from most of her friends and family. He and I had a falling out over all this, where I called him out on all his BS. In revenge, he said a lot of really horrible lies about me to the family and had done his best to try and get me fired from my job, as well as some other things I can't discuss. Really evil shit. As a result, we had to pay a lawyer to send him a cease and desist letter, and we went no contact with either of them. I wouldn't even be in the same building with him, for any reason, including birthdays, Christmas, etc. After a few years, I was still no contact with either of them. My wife would talk to her sister occasionally, which didn't really bother me, but I came under a lot of pressure from my in-laws to normalize things somewhat. You know, for the good of the family. Now, I got along great with my in-laws and it was really important to them, so I gave it a shot. I would basically be at an event with them but wouldn't socialize or engage with either of them. A few months later, they announced their engagement and began planning the wedding. My wife was to be maid of honor and our kids, 6 and 4, would be flower girl and ring bearer. Now, I was absolutely not in the wedding party, this you must understand, and I was perfectly okay with that. As the planning continues, I get word that Bill would like to buy me a suit as his way of making amends, and so I wouldn't have to pack a suit of my own. I had plenty of suits, so this was a really odd request, but he comes from some money and said it was his way of trying to make amends for all the BS in the past. Whatever, fine, I'll go along. I sent my measurements over along with my son's for the wedding planner. The wedding was in a different state, so I wouldn't be able to see the suit until we picked it up a day before the wedding. This concerned me, along with his insistence that I wouldn't have to bring a suit, so I packed my own suit as well, a nice charcoal gray two-piece with white shirt and blue tie. We fly into the state, check into our hotel, and I head to the haberdasher to pick up the suits along with my son and father-in-law, also not in the wedding party but also getting a suit. Turns out Bill hadn't bought us suits but had actually rented us the same cream-colored tuxedos as his side of the wedding party. Basically trying to dress us up like the groomsmen despite not being in the wedding. I immediately saw why he didn't want me to pack a suit and had a good laugh at it, but said nothing and let him think he got over on me. My wife also found this quite hilarious, and there we formulated our plan. The day of the wedding, everyone got dolled up in their wedding kits, champagne dresses and cream tuxedos, and me, in my charcoal gray suit. When Bill saw me, he was cordial but looked a bit irked. I found out through the grapevine he was absolutely livid I didn't wear the tux. Which, frankly, made my day. Now for the absolute best part, and cue the petty revenge, the pictures. Because I was close family, I was included in a lot of pictures by default, but my wife, bless her heart, made a point of pulling me into almost every picture she was able to. When the pictures came back, it was amazing. In at least 60% of the pictures, I was in there somewhere and stood out like a sore thumb. 8 to 10 people all dressed the same in cream and white, and me, in my almost black suit. Liz was so beyond angry she had a near meltdown and insisted that everyone get together to retake the pictures the right way, which of course didn't happen as this was 3 months after the wedding. Story 3. My half-sister wanted to show up in a wedding dress to my engagement party, so I changed the party theme so she would fit right in. My half-sister Janice and I never really got along. We both are 24. My father left my mother for her mother and we were born the same month 20 days apart. It has always been weird. It doesn't help that Janice's mom hates me and my mom. By extension, Janice and I didn't have the best relationship. She has always tried to one-up me. Even though we both have a similar economic background. I see and give examples of this, but for the sake of the world limit won't write them here. So now my fiancé and I got engaged last month and had our engagement party this Saturday. We had planned it originally as a casual formal event. Nice dresses, but not I am going to the Met Gala ball nice. More like we are going to a good restaurant nice. Anyway, my cousin hits me up saying she has to show me something. It was the picture of the dress Janice was gonna wear. This dress. Jesus Christ. It can only be described as opulent. It was long and white. Strapless with sewn-in crystals and golden accents. I'm pretty sure it's a wedding dress, but I can't be 100%. This made me really mad. So I decided. Fuck that. I started texting people telling them that there had been a change of plans. And that instead of casual formal I decided to make a costume party. My mother's side is crazy for Halloween, so they were immediately on board. I told my father via text, and asked for him to relay the message to Janice, her mother. Knowing full well that he would forget or leave it to the last minute. Saturday comes along. Guests start showing up. Most of them in costumes. Some didn't have time to get one. We just provided them with fun hats and cheap wigs. Janice, my dad and her mother come like 1 hour late. As soon as she notices that everyone was either wearing elaborate costumes or weird accessories and she didn't stand out, she lost it. Especially when my fiancé came along and told her that her bride dress looked amazing for a cheap costume. She left crying, and her mother and my father told me that I was being childish and I could have told Janice myself and not have tasked my father. For those interested, my fiancé was dressed as Bubbles and I was dressed as Mojo Jojo. My mom and aunts went as ABBA. Other memorable costumes were Luffy and Zorro, Ian Malcolm and John Hammond and Jesus. So why did I invite her? It's one of those weird family situations where not inviting them would have been more dramatic. You know, when you try pleasing everyone. Plus I still wanted a relationship with my father, so not inviting Janice and her mom would have made things super difficult and made it so my father would have had to choose. When I kept thinking of it, I noticed that my father wouldn't have chosen me on this scenario. Which is why I ended up cutting them off. The point of this is to ruin my half-sister's intention. She wasn't just dressed nicely as some of you put it. She wore a wedding dress to my engagement party. I'd much rather subvert this whole mess rather than have her smugly sitting at the table with her wedding dress. Also, some of you are really hung up on the cheap wigs part and ignore literally everything else regarding the party. A minority of our guests wore those cheap wigs. Also, it literally doesn't matter. We had a blast. After she left, I didn't even think of her again till a few days later. I don't regret the costume party. I wish I thought of it earlier, to be honest.